there is a place where the silence of the savannah is broken only by the whispers of ancient stone. Massive granite walls rise from the earth like the bones of a forgotten god, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. You stand before Great Zimbabwe, a medieval city whose origins vanish into the mist of a contested past. The most haunting structure here is the Conical Tower, a solid cylindrical spire of intricately fitted stone blocks standing 30 feet high. It has no doorway, no staircase, no inner chamber, just a seamless tapering cone pointing toward an indifferent sky. To this day, the tower's purpose remains one of archaeology's most profound riddles. No mortar binds these granite slabs, yet they have gripped each other in perfect balance for over 700 years. The builders did not use arches or vaults, but a dry stone technique so precise that a knife blade cannot penetrate the joints. Who were the hands that stacked this impossible puzzle against the forces of gravity and time? The question alone has unmade reputations, fueled colonial fantasies, and lured truth-seekers into a labyrinth of speculation. In the early morning fog, the encircling walls seemed to float above the dew-soaked grass, a phantom city from a half-remembered dream. Scholars estimate that the complex once housed over 10,000 people, a vibrant capital bustling with trade in gold, ivory, and iron. But the towering ramparts were not built for defense alone. Their sweeping curves and shadowed passageways speak a language of ceremony and power. The most enigmatic voice of all is the Great Conical Tower, a monolith of compressed silence at the heart of the royal enclosure. Before the evidence could speak, a cacophony of prejudice drowned out the soil's own testimony. When European explorers first stumbled upon these ruins in the 19th century, they refused to believe Africans could have engineered such sophistication. The walls were too grand, the geometry too refined, the astronomy too precise for a continent they had been taught was a blank slate. And so a cascade of wild theories flooded the gap between observation and racism. The ruins were casually attributed to Phoenician sailors, the Queen of Sheba's wandering architects, or even the lost tribes of Israel. One infamous excavator, in a frenzy of colonial arrogance, scoured the site for foreign artifacts, discarding any evidence that smacked of local origin. He razed entire sections of the site to find a mythical White Queen's treasure, leaving only rubble and a bruised historical record. The Conical Tower was labeled a phallic symbol from a distant Semitic cult, a clumsy attempt to erase its African soul. The stones themselves remained patient, knowing that human bias cannot forever silence hard science. Then, in 1929, a resolute British archaeologist named Gertrude Catton Thompson arrived with spade, brush, and an uncompromising faith in stratigraphy. She dug down through the layers of occupation, past the ash and pottery shards, until the bedrock confessed its secrets. Her excavation proved beyond reasonable doubt that Great Zimbabwe was entirely and brilliantly African, raised by the ancestors of the local Shona people. The datable artifacts, the cultural continuum, the skeletal remains, all of it pointed toward an indigenous origin stretching back to the 11th century. But scientific validation did not extinguish the deeper mystery. It simply reframed the question more honestly. If the Shona built this marvel, how did they organize the labor to quarry, transport, and lift thousands of tons of granite without the wheel or the crane? Each massive block was hand-hewn from exposed granite domes, then maneuvered up steep hillsides using only human muscle, leverage, and sheer communal will. The engineering is not merely an act of strength. It is a silent manifesto of social cohesion and spiritual drive. And that brings us back to the conical tower, which stands fully solid, consuming roughly 1,000 cubic feet of dressed stone while serving no obvious utility. Some researchers theorize the tower was a granary, a colossal symbol of the king's abundance, designed to project power into the mortal and spirit worlds. Its shape echoes the circular traditional granaries of Shona homesteads, but magnified to a cosmic scale, a grain bin for deities rather than men. Others look at its perfectly curved profile and see an axis mundi, a cord binding the living to the ancestors, a ladder of stone reaching into the afterlife. Where archaeology falters, local oral memory offers fragments, but the elderly custodians speak of the tower only as a sacred place of origin, not a functional building. Imagine the night the final stone was fitted, a torchlit ceremony where the king's masons sealed the cone's apex, closing the circuit forever. After that, not a single generation scrawled a name on its flanks or stripped a block to build a new dwelling. Such was the awe it commanded. But the labyrinth of theories grows thornier when you consider the city's sudden collapse around the 15th century. By the time Portuguese traders probed the hinterland, the towers were already abandoned, with only spectral cattle herds grazing among the fallen enclosures. Environmental data suggests a catastrophic mix of overgrazing, drought, and exhausted soils may have choked the kingdom's food supply. Political fragmentation likely followed, a feud between rival princes splintering the stone capital into a scattering of mute villages. The walls that once united hundreds of workers now divided an unraveling aristocracy. There is a darker hypothesis, whispered in academic corridors, that the tower itself became a curse, a monument whose sheer weight of ritual paralyzed the state. With every ceremonial circuit around its base, the king may have lost more pragmatic touch with his starving subjects. The granite blocks never speak. So this remains conjecture, a shadow puppet show for the scientifically uncomfortable. What is certain is that the forest slowly swallowed the roads, and the towers became the residence of baboons and wild leopards. For half a millennium, the stones slept while mythmakers across oceans distorted their dream. The human cost of the mystery is written in the lives consumed by its pursuit. Pioneer excavators died of malaria in the nearby bush, their journals filled with feverish sketches of the tower they never fully understood. Local guides who grew up in the ruin's shadow have spoken of a creeping dread that grips the soul at dusk, a sense of being watched by the ancestors themselves. You stand at the edge of the royal enclosure as the equatorial sun drops below the parapet, and you feel a primal hum in the soles of your feet. The tower's silhouette becomes a dark pillar, absorbing the last light, and suddenly the term solid mystery gains a physical weight. Psychologists have noted that humans are uniquely disturbed by artifacts that appear functional yet lack any discernible function. This is the tower's psychic hook. We are pattern-seeking creatures, and a millennia-old finger pointing nowhere is a trap for our very consciousness. A stonemason from the modern village told an interviewer that his ancestors built with music, that the secret lies not in the blocks, but in the rhythm of placing them. Perhaps the tower is the frozen echo of a dirge or a fertility chant, a materialized song that we can no longer hear. This theory cannot be excavated with a trowel, but it haunts the archaeometry labs where lasers scan joint profiles and geochemists analyze clay residues. The science is rigorous. The tower's construction is now mapped in three-dimensional detail, its every granite lip cataloged. Geological sourcing reveals the quarries are located only a few miles away, which dispels the old legend of stones carried from an impossible distance. Carbon dating of embedded charcoal in the enclosure floor confirms the tower dates to the 14th century, the zenith of the city's power. Yet all this data only deepens the enigma by showing what the tower is not. It is not a tomb, not a watchtower, not a reservoir. It is a contradiction in visible stone, a monument to nothing tangible and perhaps everything intangible. We tell ourselves that time reveals all things, but as you run your fingers along the cool, lichen-dappled wall, that assurance crumbles. The deeper human obsession is not simply with the builder's identity, but with our own vulnerability to oblivion. If a civilization so advanced could vanish, leaving a cipher of granite, what guarantee do we have that our own glass towers will be understood in 1,000 years? The Shona people were not obliterated, of course. They thrive today, their culture alive, their dialects spoken. Yet the specific key to the tower's grammar was lost. Modern custodians from the local community now walk the site, balancing ancestral pride with the global hunger for the tower's solution. This hunger has a dark side. Looters have chipped at the base of the tower, hunting for a hidden chamber that the radar stubbornly refuses to detect. The structure is solid, a stubborn riddle that resists even violence. Preservationists have encased the monument in state protection, but the tower needs no shield. It is engineered to outlast its interrogators. You might imagine the builders, their skin bronzed by the high-veld sun, standing exactly where you stand, satisfied with a purpose they had no need to carve in letters. And perhaps that is the deepest wound to the modern ego, the possibility that the truth was never meant for us. An old maxim in cryptology holds that the most secure code is the one that no one suspects is a code. Conical tower may be a decoy, a blind to occupy restless minds, while the real secret lies in the arrangement of the 30-foot boulders ringing the valley. Satellite imagery has revealed subtle alignments between the tower, the distant monoliths, and the solstice sun, a landscape-scale calendar of the spirit. But each new discovery introduces fresh ambiguity, a fractal of conjecture blossoming every time technology brushes the surface. The labyrinth has no center. It has the tower, and the tower is silent. We are left, ultimately, with an object that reflects our own fascination back at us, a mirror made of ancient labor. The eternal fade descends as the mystery becomes an intimate companion, an unanswerable question you carry in your chest long after leaving the site. There is a strange peace in acknowledging that some human creations transcend the duty to explain themselves. The conical tower of Great Zimbabwe watches the centuries pass like a stone sentinel whose orders were whispered and then forgotten. It watches the ceaseless migration of clouds, the tremble of drought, the patient erosion that grinds mountains to sand. In its flawless, doorless form, it seems to assert that the sacred has no interior, that the divine is an outer surface curving away from comprehension. Philosophers might call it a monument to the apophatic, to the truth that can only be approached by negating what it is not. But the farmers who grow maize in the shadow of the ruins call it Mutorashanga, a place of fearful reverence, a home for the ancestral spirits. For them, the tower is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be honored. Scientific conferences continue to publish papers on cosmic ray muon imaging and thermal inertia studies of the structure, searching for the void that logic demands. And still the tower yields nothing but its own weight, the density of unanswered prayer. You leave at dusk, looking back once to see the silhouette merge with the indigo sky, a vanishing point for human certainty. The enigma of its builders is no longer a gap in history, but a statement about history's essential incompleteness. We live among the ruins of meanings we will never recover, and the conical tower is the most dignified emblem of that fate. Somewhere in the silence between the granite grains, the original drumbeat still pulses, a rhythm heard only by those willing to listen without demanding translation.